Deception is always the best strategy, but the best deceptions require a smokescreen to distract people's attention from your real purpose. And no one did this better than Haile Selassie. In the mid-1920s, the powerful warlords of Ethiopia were coming to the realization that a young man of the nobility named Haile Selassie, also known as Rastafari, was outcompeting them all and nearing the point where he could proclaim himself as their leader, unifying the country for the first time in decades. Most of his rivals could not understand how this wispy, quiet, mild-mannered man had been able to take control. Yet in 1927, Selassie was able to summon the warlords one by one to come to Addis Ababa to declare their loyalty and recognize him as leader. Some hurried, others hesitated, but only one, a warlord by the name of Balcha, dared to defy Selassie totally. Balcha was a blustery man and a great warrior, and he considered the new leader to be weak and unworthy. Finally, Selassie, in his gentle but stern way, commanded Balcha to come. The warlord decided to obey, but in doing so he would turn the tables on this pretender to the Ethiopian throne. He would come to Addis Ababa at his own speed and with an army of 10,000 men, a force large enough to defend himself, perhaps even start a civil war. Stationing this formidable force in a valley 3 miles from the capital, he waited, as a king would. Selassie would have to come to him. Selassie did indeed send emissaries asking Balcha to attend an afternoon banquet in his honor. But Balcha was no fool. He knew history. He knew that previous kings and lords of Ethiopia had used banquets as a trap. Once he was there and full of drink, Selassie would have him arrested or even murdered. To signal his understanding of the situation, he agreed to come to the banquet, but only if he could bring his personal bodyguard, 600 of his very best soldiers, all armed and ready to defend him and themselves. To Balcha's surprise, Selassie answered with the utmost politeness that he would be honored to play host to such warriors. On the way to the banquet, Balcha warned his soldiers not to get drunk and to be on their guard. When they arrived at the palace, Selassie was his charming best. He deferred to Balcha, treating him as if he desperately needed his approval and cooperation. But Balcha refused to be charmed, and he warned Selassie that if he did not return to his camp by nightfall, his army had orders to attack the capital. Selassie reacted as if he was hurt by this mistrust. Over the meal, when it came time for the traditional singing of songs in honor of the Ethiopian leaders, he made a point of allowing only songs honoring the warlord Balcha. It seemed to Balcha that Selassie was scared, intimidated by this great warrior who could not be outwitted. Sensing the change, Balcha believed that he would be the one to call the shots in the days to come. At the end of the afternoon, Balcha and his soldiers began their march back to the camp amidst cheers and gun salutes. Looking back to the capital over his shoulder, he planned his strategy. How his soldiers would march through the capital in triumph within weeks, and Selassie would be put in his place being either prison or death. When Balcha came inside of his camp, however, he saw that something was terribly wrong. Where before there had been colourful tents stretching as far as the eye could see, now there was nothing, only smoke from doused fires. What was going on? A witness told Balcha what had happened. During the banquet, a large army, commanded by an ally of Selassie, had stolen up on Balcha's encampment by a side route that they hadn't seen. This army had not come to fight, however, knowing that Balcha would have heard a noisy battle, and hurried back with his 600-man bodyguard. Selassie had armed his own troops with baskets of gold and cash. They had surrounded Balcha's army and proceeded to buy every last one of their weapons. Those who refused were easily intimidated. Within a few hours, Balcha's entire force had been disarmed and scattered in all directions. Realizing his danger, Balcha decided to march south with his 600 soldiers to regroup, but the same army that had disarmed his soldiers blocked their way. The other way out was to march to the capital, but Selassie had sent his army to defend that. Like a chess player, he had predicted Balcha's moves and had checkmated him. For the first time in his life, Balcha surrendered. To repent of his sins of pride and ambitions, he agreed to enter a monastery. Balcha's last words as he entered the monastery were, "Do not underestimate the power of Tafari. He creeps like a mouse, but he has jaws like a lion." Throughout Selassie's long reign, no one could quite figure him out. Ethiopians liked their leaders fierce, but Selassie, who wore the front of a gentle, peace-loving man, lasted longer than any of them. Never angry or impatient, he lured his victims with sweet smiles, lulling them with charm and obsequiousness before he attacked. In the case of Balcha, Selassie played on the man's wariness, his suspicion that the banquet was a trap, which in fact it was, but not the one that he expected. Selassie's way of allaying Balcha's Emperor's fears, letting him bring his bodyguard to the banquet, giving him top billing there, making him feel in control, created a thick smokescreen, concealing the real action that was happening 3 miles away. The paranoid and the wary are often easy to deceive. If you win their trust in one area, you have a smokescreen that can blind them in another. Properly set up, the smokescreen is a weapon of great power. It enabled the gentle Selassie to totally destroy his enemy without even firing a single bullet.